Some models are continuing to show an increasing snow signal as we go into the month of December, and this comes as no surprise as cooler than average air is expected to persist for weeks, especially in the eastern and central US. This video has all the details on that active weather pattern ahead, and that includes who could be impacted by some heavy snow totals.
One Nation Weather.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy weekend to tune into this video. As always, I greatly appreciate you being here. Of course, if you are new to the channel and you enjoy the rest of this video, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button down below as I'm on my way now to 7,000 subscribers. Also, for those of you who normally watch me, you might notice that I sound a bit weird. This is because I have some sort of cold or some sort of virus coming on right now. But I'm going to keep the grind up anyway and keep these videos going. Let's go ahead and get right into this one by taking a look 15 to 20,000 feet on up into the atmosphere using the European ensemble members. And this is going to do a good job, as I always say, of showing how the atmosphere is going to dictate the surface pattern that I'm going to show throughout the rest of the video. In this case, as we start off this week, going into our Monday, December 2nd of 2024, we've overall got a big blue area, filling up areas east of the Mississippi Valley and all the way over here to the East Coast, even from Maine back down to Florida, points in between. This indicates a trough or a dip in the jet stream where cooler than average air is being allowed to make its way southward. Meanwhile, the opposite effect is going to happen, especially as we go out of this weekend and into next week, if you go out west. Now, I'm not saying that we're not going to have some teens, 20s, even some single digits in some parts of the Northwest and Rockies regions of the U.S. as a result of this cool down that's going to continue east into the week ahead, but overall a big ridging pattern is going to continue to develop and especially build as we get over Monday into Tuesday and even into Wednesday of the week ahead. You can see that there and even into parts of the central plains. So if we want to keep this cold pattern going in the eastern U.S., you need some sort of reinforcement to our trough, and right now there is a very strong signal indicated by that big green area coming down into the Great Lakes. That's some form of upper level low pressure system that could even have some surface characteristics, likely some sort of clipper system that could even have some snow with it, cutting its way out of the north central plains, bringing the jet stream down with it. Those lines where you see them, especially tight there from the Dakotas and Minnesota going all the way down to the Carolinas, that's your jet stream really making its way down out of the central plains and diving down to the southeast, all points north of that jet stream, in fair game for a possibility of snowfall with any other storms, especially behind that clipper, and that snow line could sink further south. We might not just have a chance of snow late next week into next weekend as you make your way up there towards the far northern U.S. border with Canada as a result of that initial clipper. Behind that clipper, anything that makes its way north, especially of that line that I'm drawing right now on your screen, will have a decent chance of maybe getting some ice, some snowfall, some wintry mix, and yes, I'm talking as far south as Kentucky, Virginia, maybe even North Carolina with a signal like this. It really all just depends on if a storm can work its way into that, though, before ridging returns to the pattern and things get warmer across the entirety of the U.S. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the future radar picture from the European model. We're going to compare this to the GFS model, so hang with me as we go through these solutions over the next 5 to 6 minutes. First of all, here, as we make our way out of our Saturday evening when I'm filming this and into the first day of December, our Sunday, December 1st, in the morning hours, whatever you got going on, you're going to need the jacket if it involves anything outdoors. I hope it doesn't out here from the central plains to the East Coast Sunday early morning, because it is going to be downright cold. Lots of teens, lots of single digits. Some spots further south down towards the 20s and 30s, but still, that's below average for this time of the year. Overall, though, the chance for snow in the near term pretty low unless you're in some of the lake effect areas up there in the Great Lakes. Talked about that more in my last video. Some spots there in the Midwest maybe getting a shot of snow here or there as we go through the next couple of days, but generally a quiet pattern that continues persisting through our Monday. And then Tuesday is when that clipper system that's going to probably reinforce our eastern trough shows up on this European model. Of course, it's going to line up right in time with that mid-level pattern I showed you earlier because, of course, this is the same model, just showing you precipitation. As you make your way out of the north central plains and the upper Midwest, pushing down into some parts of the Great Lakes region, probably sometime late Tuesday going into Wednesday based on this solution, a chance for some snow, a chance for some wintry mix of rain and snow, and then maybe even a chance of some gusty winds kicking up depending on your exact location. There's still plenty of time to figure out exactly when snow's going to be where, but it certainly looks like in the cold environment that this system is going to reinforce. It's going to be mostly snow, especially if that moisture stays locked up towards that Canadian border. Again, notice that timestamp. This is Wednesday, December 4th in the early morning. Some parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and the upper peninsula of that state, and then eventually moving out of there and into the Northeast and Ohio Valley, possibly getting a chance of snow out of this clipper system. Again, though, this system is really not bringing snow to any other areas than most systems in the last week or so have been doing. The only exception to that is going to be possibly as we go here, not only into the interior Northeast, but as you go down closer to the coastal cities like Boston, Providence, Rhode Island, into Hartford, Connecticut, New York City, even if you're not right at the coast, of course, in all of those places, of course, you're getting closer to the coast than a place like the Adirondacks. Generally, the entire Northeast has possibly some chance of snow out of this clipper if you go with the European model as we go out of Wednesday and into Thursday next week. So this is just possibly round one. That being said, the European model does not go too gung-ho on this possible round two. That could be a lot bigger if you go with some other solutions. Notice here as we go out of our Friday into our Saturday, another system taking a very similar track to our reinforcing clipper that we saw just a couple days before. Maybe some snow and gusty winds just like the previous one as it makes its way here through parts of the upper Midwest, maybe as far south as Chicago, Illinois, and then over into Michigan. But again, as we go out of our Saturday and into our Sunday, that particular solution doesn't show much going on. With that next system, it fizzles out as it makes its way into the Northeast U.S. But let me show you a very different solution here out of the GFS model and why the signal for late next week needs to be watched. First of all, the early to mid part of next week looks pretty similar to the Euro model, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You can see around Tuesday, December 3rd in the early morning hours, maybe some snow in a place like the southern and central Appalachians. Not very good for some of the Helene victims that we have there, of course, in western North Carolina. Prayers continue to go up to you guys. But as we go out of our Tuesday and into our Wednesday, there's that clipper system. Same general time frame, Wednesday early morning, somewhere with its gusty winds and periods of snowfall up here around us, particularly that arrowhead of Minnesota into north central Wisconsin, the upper peninsula of Michigan, the rest of the Glove of Michigan, and then maybe some lake effect areas trying to get going, especially as this sinks southeast through the day Wednesday and into parts of the Ohio Valley and Northeast. This system, almost surprisingly, especially since we're this far out, plays out exactly how the European model showed it. Look at this. As we go out of our Wednesday into our Thursday, this initial clipper is certainly something that they do agree on. Possibility of some snow into parts of the Ohio Valley, especially with some accumulations back into the interior Northeast. With cold air wrapping around our low as this reinforcement moves in around Thursday, we could also see some snow try to push towards coastal cities. Portland, Maine, Boston, Massachusetts, maybe some flurries as far south as New York City and north central parts of New Jersey, maybe even Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know there's a lot of ifs and buts and maybes still for exactly where the snow could go out of that first system, but again, the general setup looks the same, and that's good to see with model consensus, especially for a winter storm 5 days out. But here we go towards our Saturday, December 7th in the early morning hours, out of our late Friday the 6th into this time frame. Flashback to what that European model showed, barely any snow out of this possible second system as it makes its way on along a similar track, making its way down into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. But look at what the GFS model does with this, and I've seen some even more southern solutions with all the cool air in place, maybe as far south as the mid-Atlantic. Some point out of Saturday into Sunday, if this storm were to intensify, it could have a coastal low pressure feature like you see there, and could that mean heavy snow even very close to the coast here, as well as far inland in the Northeast U.S.? Certainly possible. I can't stress enough that this is all just a signal, but it is a signal that deserves watching, especially, in the first week or two of December. And here we go. Let's take a look at just the snowfall that we're going to see through our first clipper and everything before that. By the time we go to the middle to the back half of next week, this is through our Thursday, December 5th. Notice where we're going to see that best chance for snowfall, and it goes with that first clipper out of places like northern Minnesota and the Arrowhead region, where a few inches could be possible, at least based on current guidance, all the way down here with several inches possible in some places in between, and then as you make your way into the interior Northeast. Some areas I want you to focus on here on your screen, obviously, lake effect zones, off Superior, off Michigan, off of Erie, and then off of Ontario there, all those lakes bringing foot-plus totals. Make sure you're staying tuned to your local National Weather Service if you are seeing that near-term or longer-range lake effect snow here in the Great Lakes. But even notice, as you push towards places like Connecticut, Rhode Island, this GFS model, and the Euro with what it showed earlier as well, indicating at least a couple of inches could happen there out of that first clipper next week. But then look at where the GFS model has our snow line going out of that second one. I can't stress enough, of all the things I've shown, this is one of the most risky things to show, and especially to guarantee with totals. So do not take this as a forecast, just take this as a very early projection of what could happen. With a more southern track of snow some point around the 7th into the 8th of December that we could see behind our initial clipper. Could that mean snow as far south, even with some light accumulations into Virginia, Maryland, and the Washington, D.C. region, and then over to the southern New England coastlines, even into Cape Cod? I would not rule that out. So watch that signal if you're in the northeast. But of course, we've got to track this cool air that we've got in the near term. And I just want to talk about the general temperatures that we're going to see across the U.S. through the next 3 to 4 days. So let's do that with a breakdown, starting with our National Digital Forecast database into the Sunday, December 1st time frame. First of all, I feel like I've been talking about these numbers coming up for this weekend, and now they're finally here. As you wake up on the first day of December, man, does it feel like a new month. And this is the beginning of our meteorological winter, with temperatures around 0 to 15 anywhere here between those two arrows on your screen, coming out of the west central parts of the plains all the way over to the Great Lakes. Very frigid morning, and it will feel even cooler with the winds. 20s and 30s as far south as the Gulf Coast, though, and we've got freeze warnings in places like the Panhandle of Florida recently. By Sunday afternoon, we warm up and recover nicely down there towards the Gulf Coast and really the entire southern U.S. But if you're out there in the Dakotas, Minnesota, it's going to be hard to get out of the teens. That also includes Montana for our Sunday afternoon, and then more like mid-20s as you go over here to east central parts of Minnesota and a place like Minneapolis. Same goes into Wisconsin, same goes into Des Moines, Iowa, Springfield, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, and then over into Terre Haute, Indiana, Fort Wayne. You guys are around that 25 to 27 mark into our Sunday. By the time we go into our Monday, that northern Mississippi River Valley really staying there around that 10 to 15 degree mark. So a very cold morning once again. Not necessarily record breaking for most zones, but this is, 10, 15, 20 degrees below average for this time of the year. And it gets even colder as you go up there towards that Canadian border. Monday afternoon is going to be yet another cold one. 30s from the interior northeast down to the Ohio Valley, and then 20s the further northwest you go from there. By our Tuesday morning, we begin to see a transition with that western ridge becoming a little bit more visible, around average with some freezing conditions back into the far mountain west in places like Nevada, Idaho, and Utah. Meanwhile, northeast of this line that I've got on your screen, remember, this is where that trough I showed you 9 minutes ago, this is where this comes into play on that northeast side of the trough early to the middle part of this week. That's where we've got a lot of those temperatures in the teens and single digits to start off the day, and that's where we've got a lot of those temperatures staying in the 20s and 30s even in the afternoon. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to see warm air keyword try, to make a run east late next week. That's what our Clipper system out of Wednesday into Thursday is going to help keep away, at least for, at least another 3 to 5 days afterwards, and that's why we could get snow in the wake of it, because it's going to be cold once again from the Midwest over to the Northeast at least. Here we go, Wednesday morning. I mean, even as warmer air tries to make its way up into Missouri, we're still, around freezing to the 20s in the morning. So it's not like this big push of warm air is that intense. You can see it's still locked up back down here to the south central plains. Maybe some 40s and 50s making a run for the mid-Mississippi Valley by our Wednesday afternoon. That will cause melting of whatever snow and light snowpack we've tried to build in a place like St. Louis, Missouri, for example, with that light snow over the last day or so. But let me not run on about that measly snow, and let me talk about the recap for this video just really quickly, because again, colder blasts are expected to persist overall as the trend for the eastern U.S., with reinforcements coming by the middle of the back half of next week, just as a warm-up tries to make its way eastward like I was just showing you. The models agree on the trends, with that Clipper system around midweek to late week. That could bring some snow into the Great Lakes northeast, maybe even closer to the coast there in the northeast. That's a detail that still needs to be fine-tuned. But behind that first Clipper, that's when things could get interesting. Some models like the GFS show a snow signal even as far south as the mid-Atlantic. Others do not. We'll have to figure out about that, but one thing I can tell you for sure, warmer air I think is going to make a fight by at least mid-December in some zones. That is it for this video, though. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, if you want the same weather model maps that I use in my videos for yourself, check out the free trial link for WeatherBell below in the description to this video. But that is going to be it for this one. I might see you back here Sunday. I might see you back here Monday. Somewhere in the next couple days is my intended next upload. If you want more consistent, accurate, and educational updates, subscribe down below.
One nation weather.